Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody out there, and welcome to the launch webinar of my ebook, The Short Guide to Becoming a PMP. I'm very glad that so many of you could join us this morning. Thank you. Well, it's morning here in California. For many of you, it will be afternoon or evening. My name is Cornelius Fichtner. I have been a project manager for 20 plus years or so. However, for the last 7 years, I have been training people to prepare for and pass the PMP exam. At the moment, it's 16,000 students who have passed this exam, or at least prepared for it. We're very close, in fact, to 17,000 students. My focus when we train people for the PMP exam is on portable media training. So we're talking podcasting, we're talking videos that you can carry with you on your iPod, iPhone, Android. We have the Prepcast for PMP exam preparation, the PM podcast for general project management training, and the PDU cast. Once you are a PMP, then you need PDUs, and the PDU podcast there on the right-hand side will help you to do that. All right, let's take a look at the agenda this morning. We are going to start out with a bit of housekeeping, then we do a quick jump into the PMP exam, assuming that many of you will already know it. I'll tell you about the short guide. I'll tell you immediately how to get a copy of your guide. We'll take a look into the guide. We will open it up. I will walk you through the 8 steps that are necessary in preparing to become a PMP. And then we'll take a step outside of the guide and we'll look at multiple choice test taking strategies. And then we will also look at some discount coupons for you, and I have a few requests there at the end so that you can take action on what you have learned today. So let us begin with some housekeeping. First of all, you are on mute, so don't worry about your dog barking. That is okay. Nobody will hear you, and I see that somebody typed in that my speech is breaking up. Very sorry about that. That has a lot to do, of course, with the internet quality, with your connection speed, with my connection speed, so everything obviously has to be perfect. We are using AnyMeeting. AnyMeeting is a free tool that allows us to have up to 200 people attending our webinar. It is free. That means that it is ad supported. The ads are on the right. You cannot turn the ads off. And if you happen to find an ad that seems interesting to you, click on it. The webinar will continue. The ad will open in a new browser window. If you wish to resize it, then please do hold your mouse over the display, and at the bottom you'll see that gray black box appearing, and you can make it smaller, make it larger. If you have any questions, type them into the chat box on the left-hand side, and I will try and answer your questions. Remember, this webinar is recorded, so you can watch the webinar after the fact. We tested this. The recording video is quite good. So is the recorded voice on the video. So if you have problems, like a couple of people have already typed in, then you may want to choose to leave the webinar right now and watch the recorded video after the fact. Just in case you are wondering, this webinar does not count for PDUs. So if you are a PMP looking for PDUs, you cannot claim PDUs for being here, nor can you claim contact hours. So this is not in preparation for the PMP exam. PMI is very strict here. We are talking about a product. We are not talking about project management knowledge. That is why it doesn't count about PDUs and about contact hours. And a question just came up about contact hours. Well, look at contact hours in a minute, so we'll get back to that. Don't worry about it. All right. The first thing that I would like you to do is I'd like to to tell you, I'd like you to tell me who you are, because I'm really interested why you are here. Are you a PMP trainer who will help other people to prepare for the exam? Are you just studying for the PMP? Are you here because you're generally interested in the PMP exam? Or do you happen to be a business partner of our company? So what I would like you to do is you should now be seeing a poll jumping up on your screen. So please take a moment and click the appropriate button there. The first one is if you are a PMP, helping others to prepare. Second one is for you are somebody studying for the PMP exam. Third, I just want to learn more. And the last one is for the business partners. I'll give you about a minute or so until we have most people here who were able to click their buttons. Okay, so it looks, from what I can tell, most people here, we have currently 42 attending here. Actually, we have 57 attending, and most of you, about half it seems, are project managers preparing for the PMP exam. Some of you are helping others to prepare for them. Welcome. And of course also welcome to those people who are here to just learn a bit more about the PMP exam. We're going to stop voting here. Now I know who you are and I can really focus in on your needs here. All right. Thank you very much for letting me know who you are at this time. So, according to the agenda, the first thing that we want to do is we want to look at what the PMP exam is. And because so many of you are here already preparing for the exam, that means we're really going to do this very quickly, not spending too much time on this slide here with the overview of the PMP exam. On a very high level, the PMP exam is not only an industry-recognized certification, it is a worldwide recognized certification for project managers. It is maintained and managed by the PMI, the Project Management Institute. Taking the PMP exam, preparing for it, and finally also taking the exam and passing it and getting certified means that you have the experience and education and competency to successfully lead and direct projects. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are good project managers, all of us who have the PMP exam. It just levels the playing field. It means that we have taken this exam. It means that we have demonstrated what you can read on the screen right here. The exam itself is a 200-question multiple choice exam. It takes 4 hours. You have 4 hours to answer these 200 questions. And the preparation leading up to this exam is usually about 8 to 12 weeks of study time and preparation time. And this is really where the big crux begins for most people, because you really don't know, what do I have to study? When do I have to study? What books should I read? What materials should I buy? Should I study every day? Should I study only on the weekends? How on earth do I do this? This is really the biggest hurdle for many people at the beginning of their journey to becoming a PMP. And this is hopefully then also where my book, my new ebook, The Short Guide to Becoming a PMP, is supposed to jump in and help you. The Short Guide to Becoming a PMP contains the 8 essential steps that you have to go through in order to prepare for, in order to study for the PMP exam. It contains a lot of tips and tricks and best practices, not only from my experience when I took the exam, but it's 7 years of experience being a PMP exam trainer. So you get lots of anecdotes from other people in there as well. I'll give you my study recommendations, and I also have a list of recommended study materials in there. Now, just so we are clear, everybody who is signed up to this webinar will receive an email after the webinar is done with download information. However, I want you to be able to go out there right now and take your copy of this ebook. It's a free ebook from the internet right away. So here is where you can go if you would like to get your copy and not wait for the email coming in. Simply go to freepmexamguide.com, and please note it is free PM exam guide. It's not free PMP exam guide. That is because PMI owns the copyright on the 3 letters PMP. Our company is a registered education provider, and therefore we are not allowed to use the word PMP in our domains. So it's freepmexamguide.com. And when you go to that website, this here is the website that you will end up on. Very clear. You can immediately see that you are in the right place. The way that we are giving our book away is quite simple. If you scroll down to the bottom of the screen, you will see this rather dark area here. And inside this dark area is a little yellow button that says Share to Get. So what you have to do is you have to tell your friends on Twitter or on Facebook about the fact that, well, I am reading this book, I'm downloading this book. So click on the yellow button here. A new window will open up, and now you can go ahead and you can either sign in to your Twitter account or to your Facebook account, on which their software will then post a short notice, and the short notice is really something small like, I am reading the short guide to becoming a PMP written by Cornelius Fichtner. Get your free copy at, followed by a link. So it's completely free, but the only thing we ask you is please tell your friends about it before you download it. So this is what you have to go through if you are not signed up to this particular webinar. However, again, if you are signed up to it after the webinar, you'll get an email from me, and in that email I will show you where you can go to download it. As promised, we are now going ahead and we are going to open up the guide. In the guide, we have 8 steps. They begin at assessing your eligibility, figuring out, am I even allowed to take the PMP exam? And we end after the exam, because the exam is not for life. The exam is only valid for 3 years, and then you are going to have to recertify. Now, just so we are clear on this, this presentation here is going to be on a high level. So what you see in the presentation is not as detailed as the guide is. The guide is 40 pages long, and we only have about an hour time here in the presentation, so we are staying high level. What we're going to do is, for each of these 8 steps, I'm going to focus on one specific area in each of the 8 steps, and I'm going to give you one tip as well for each of the steps. So you're getting one area focus for each step and one tip for each step. And some of these tips, by the way, they are not in the ebook itself. So they are new tips that I created as we prepared for the webinar, as we prepared this presentation here. So step 1 in the ebook. That is, assess your eligibility. Make sure that you are even allowed to take the PMP exam. All right, so what you see here is the table which PMI publishes in their PMP exam credential handbook. If you have a bachelor's degree, then the requirements in the bottom blue area count for you. If you do not have a bachelor's degree, then the top area counts. So we have 4,500 hours that you need to have had if you have a bachelor's degree, or 7,500 hours of experience managing project tasks is the requirement right there. Now, somebody earlier asked, how do I calculate these hours? Well, quite simple. You have to really sit down and you have to figure out how many hours did I work on this project? What exactly did I do on this project? On my website, on the Prepcast website, you are able to download an Excel sheet for this, and the Excel sheet will allow you to fill in the information. It'll calculate those 7,500 or 4,500 hours for you. And by the way, don't worry if you need to fill in 7,500 hours. I was one of the unlucky few who had to fill in 7,500 hours because I do not have a bachelor's degree. Okay, the second requirement is that you need to have 35 hours of formal education. These are called the 35 contact hours. The good news about this is any type of project management training that you may have had is valid. So if you have taken a project management class when you were 13 years old, then this class still counts towards your 35 contact hours. Okay. One of the biggest issues really is that some people tell me, you know what? I really don't remember all the projects that I have worked on. How on earth can I figure out what my projects were, how many hours I have? Well, here are 3 ideas for you. First of all, take a look at your old resumes. You probably still have copies from the resumes when you applied for your current job and maybe even the previous jobs. Go through those resumes and take a look at what you wrote on there, and you will very likely find most of the projects that you have worked on previously, and you can go from there. In the previous company that I worked in, we had management by objectives. So at the beginning of the year, we set goals for myself, and at the end of the year, we did a yearly evaluation. And I got a copy of this yearly evaluation, how I did on these projects, and I took them home, and I have them still with me. So take a look at your yearly evaluations that you received from your supervisor, and maybe you can find some information in there. If you're still working for the company, or if you have a good connection into the company, why not simply ask to receive a copy of your timesheet data? Most of us input their work hours into a timesheet software, so get a hold of the raw data and you can hopefully just sort it and figure out your hours like that. All right, so that was step number 1, assess your eligibility, and tip number 1. But once you have these 7,500 or 4,500 hours and 35 contact hours, then comes really the big item, and that is filling out the application. And that is step 2 of the process here. My recommendation is, yes, there is a PDF document available. Yes, you can download it, you can print it out, and you can write by hand in, but please fill it out online on pmi.org. You're attending a webinar right now, so that means you obviously have an internet connection. So go ahead and do everything online at pmi.org. The application consists of 3 sections. In section 1, you're going to have to fill in the usual stuff that you would expect, your contact information, your name, your education, your industry. Section 2 then contains the 4,500 or 7,500 hours of your project management experience. Every single project has to be entered in here, and you can probably guess this one. Section 3 contains your project management training. This is where you have to show that you have these 35 contact hours of training, that you have received those. Once you're done, you click the submit button. PMI now performs a completeness review, and they check whether or not that everything that you have input there makes a general sense. And last but not least, they will write back to you after about 5 days or so that you can now pay and that you have been accepted to take the PMP exam. But there is one other thing that might happen before that, well, once you have paid actually, and that is that you might be audited. And this is something that many people are afraid of. They are afraid of being audited by PMI, but frankly, there's nothing to be afraid of because there are steps that you can take before you get audited to make sure that everything will go smoothly. as you are filling in the application, you have to put in the names of the contact persons. Every project that you put in there needs to have a contact person. So before you submit your application to PMI, write to your contact persons and say, hey, look, I'm applying for this exam. This is what I'm going to say about our project. I believe I have worked 2,500 hours on this project like this. This is my breakdown. Do you agree with this? And they will either tell you, no, you have to make changes, or yes, I agree with it. So before you even get audited, you kind of audit yourself, and you make sure that if it comes to an audit, that your contact persons will agree that this is what you have said, and this is okay because, well, I told you ahead of time. All right, that was tip number 2 for step number 2 in the ebook. Next, you're going to want to have to start and study. But the best place to start studying for the PMP exam is not just by opening a book, but we are all project managers. We know how important the plan is on a project. So create your PMP exam study plan. Now, again, in the ebook, this is, we're going into more detail here. We've got to stay high level here. So on a high level, you have to set yourself a time of when you're going to have to study, or when you're going to want to study, rather. This is very individual. Some people have 1 hour every day. Others only have 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday. So figure out when you have the time and how long you can study. So tell yourself, I'm going to study Monday to Friday every evening from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. I have 1 hour of time. Once you know how much you can study in terms of time, get your study materials ready. Know exactly what you need. We're going to look at study materials in just a moment, and we're going to see what exactly it is that you need. But get your study materials ready. Know what you will be studying in your study materials. You know, I have 2 hours every day. That means that in my study material, I can read X number of pages every week. And that means you are going to be able to set yourself some goals, some study goals. And now you have a plan. You know how much you're going to study in terms of time. You know what you're going to study. And you have a goal that you can look forward to, that you can focus on. However, there's one thing that you have to remember. Every plan is well, doomed almost to break down at some point. So do stay flexible. Please handle the changes and the uncertainty that are coming along with any project, be it a real-life project in your organization or studying for the PMP exam. Handle them gracefully like you do at any time. My recommendation here is only plan about 80% of your available time. So what I mean by that is, let's say you know I can study for 2 hours every day. So that's 120 minutes. So you can now go ahead and say, in 120 minutes, I can read X number of pages. Don't do that. Only estimate that you can really study for about 80% of your time. So 120 minutes, 80% of that is, let's see, minus 24, that's 96 minutes, right? Calculated in my head here quickly. So only fill up about 80% of your study time. In that way, you have a little bit of a reserve there in case something happens and you need to really, hunker down and do more. All right, that was step number 3 and tip number 3, which means we are now moving into step number 4. And as promised, we're jumping into the essential study materials that you need for your exam. There are 2 categories from my point of view of study materials. One category is the must-have study materials, and the second category is the, well, we should have this study materials. Let's begin with the must-haves. You must have the PMBOK guide. There's just no way around it. The PMP exam is based largely on the PMBOK guide. About 75% at least of all the questions in the exam are somehow related back to the PMP exam. Now, that doesn't mean that the question is, what's on page 212 on the PMP exam. No, it's the concepts that are taken from the PMBOK guide and then turned into a PMP exam question. So you must study the PMBOK guide. However, the PMBOK guide is extremely dry. It is not a study book, it is a reference book. That means that you're going to have to get yourself also an exam preparation book, a study guide book. These study guide books, the most famous one is obviously the one from Rita Mulcahy, but Andy Crow has written one. There's one from O'Reilly. There are many of these books out there. They have taken the content from the PMBOK guide and they have turned this information into a more readable, a more accessible text. Now, let me also make a distinction here between those exam study guides and the exam study guide that we're talking about right now. So the ebook that I wrote, The Short Guide to Becoming a PMP, is telling you how you have to study. These guidebooks that I'm recommending here, they're telling you what you have to study. So they really go into the content. Once you have gone through the PMBOK guide and your exam study book, then you also want to have a simulator, because just studying the material is not enough. You have to prepare for the exam in a real-life environment. You want to know, well, did I understand all of this correctly? Am I able to actually answer real exam questions, or rather simulated exam questions? That's why I recommend get yourself a PMP exam simulator as well. Next, we have the 3 should-have essential study materials here. So first of all, consider going to a workshop. And by workshop, I simply mean a class that helps you prepare for the PMP exam. This class can be online. This class can be in person in an actual live classroom. So this will allow you to ask questions. You will meet others who are studying for the exam. So there are a lot of benefits in doing that. But of course, they are also quite costly. So this is a question that you have to discuss with yourself and the budget that you have. And nowadays, most of us have modern phones, smartphones, so do get yourself some flashcards, some electronic flashcards that you can download to your smartphone, and that will allow you, no matter where you are, let's say you're going to the doctor and you have to wait for 20 minutes in the waiting room there, well, you take out your phone and you start studying for the PMP exam with your flashcards, because you have them with you at all time. And of course, last but not least, make use of all the great free resources that are out there, and take a moment to research them as well, because there are good resources out there and there are bad resources out there, obviously, and you simply have to ask yourself, okay, is this based on the latest exam, and does this free resource actually help me? My biggest recommendation always is, do use one of the forums out there, become a member of a forum, and do also use free PMP exam sample questions. Okay, so, and that's where my tip number 4 is, free questions. Where can you find these free questions? 2 websites that I would like to recommend are, first of all, oliverlehmann.com. Oliver Lehmann is a PMP exam trainer from Germany. He offers 225 questions on his website. I believe that's the number. And frankly, if I take these questions from Oliver and I get 50% right, I'm very happy. His questions are the most difficult PMP exam sample questions that you can find on the internet. And also, if maybe you don't want questions that difficult, then use the second URL that I'm giving you here, freepmexamquestions.com. Again, please notice there is no P, so it's free PM exam questions and not free PMP examquestions.com. And these questions were created by myself, and they are made available free to anyone out there, so if you would like to go there. Got a question in the chat. Where do you find the e-flashcards to download to my phone? That would be at pmflashcards.com. pmflashcards.com. That's where you can go to. It's just one word, pmflashcards.com. These are the ones that our company has created. All right, that was step 4. And tip number 4, we are now moving on because we are finally ready to really start studying. And again, I'm focusing here on just one area of the study tips and techniques that we have in the ebook. And this particular study technique here is, remember I said earlier, the PMP exam is based largely on the PMBOK guide. So please use the PMBOK guide as your roadmap. Use the PMBOK guide as a means of learning the material, because this is really what you will be tested on. So what does this mean? What does he mean by that? Well, very simple. Use the PMP exam as a way of structuring your study schedule. So, for instance, one knowledge area every week can be your target, should be your target. Usually this boils down to the fact that you have to study one process in the PMBOK guide every day. So 42 chapters, 42 processes in the PMBOK guide, and you want to read and you want to study one of these processes every day. You want to study it in the PMBOK guide, and you can also study one process from your PMP exam prep book on the side. Now, note that I said study and not read. Well, actually, once I said read, and that's wrong, because you don't just want to read the PMBOK guide. You don't just want to read your PMP exam study guide. You want to study them. And studying means, you know, not just going over it and going, yeah, I know that, yeah, I know that, yeah, I know that. No, no, no. You need to focus. You need to put your full attention into the chapter, into the paragraph, into the sentence that you are currently reading. So study, do not read. And here's tip number 5. It's quite a simple one. Repeat. Because the PMBOK guide, when you read it the first time, it's going to be very difficult. It's a dry book, but once you're done with it, I recommend reading it again. And the second time that you're going through it, believe me, it's going to be much, much easier, and you're going to have a much easier time with it. So tip number 5, repeat reading the PMBOK guide, as boring as it may seem. I see a few questions in the chat regarding a URL for downloading the flashcards. I will make sure to include a link in the email for you that I will send after the webinar. But if I should forget, you can find a link to it in the short guide to becoming a PMP, the ebook that we're talking about here. On the last pages, there are the logos of all the products that my company is selling. Okay, step number 6. This is really an important one. In order for you to prepare for the PMP exam, you need to have some kind of a way of measuring, you know, am I ready? Can I go and take the PMP exam, or do I have to learn more? And this is where sample questions and tests come in. So the free sample questions that I gave you earlier, very good gauge in regards to knowing whether or not you're ready. But, you know, free questions, they only go so far. In the end, you're going to have to, you know, break down almost and pay somebody to access a PMP exam simulator. And here are some recommendations in regards to the features that you should look for in such a simulator. And I bet the first one here in the list, you can probably come up with this yourself. The PMP exam simulator that you choose has to fit your budget. Okay, yes, make sure that the money you spend is money that you can spend, and that what you're paying for is actually something you get. Make sure that the PMP exam simulator you purchase is based on the current PMBOK guide. I am not really sure how companies out there can be ethical and still today offer PMP exam simulators that are based on a previous PMP exam and on a previous PMBOK guide. It is absolutely incredible that people are still selling this kind of stuff. Make sure that the questions inside of the simulator are written by a team of PMP experts. This is important because this is also the way that the real PMP exam questions are written by PMI. PMI has hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers around the world who regularly write PMP exam questions, new ones. And these questions, of course, are written by a person in Japan, by a person in India, by a person in Europe, by a person in South America. They have different backgrounds, different understandings of the material. So you really get, a variety of questions, a variety of inputs, which makes the PMP exam rather unpredictable. So you want your simulator to be exactly the same way. At the end of each exam that you take in the simulator, you want to make sure that you can go back and that you have review options. Well, I answered A to this question. Why is A not wrong? Why is B correct? So you want to be able to review, you want to be able to get explanations for this. And of course, always when you purchase your PMP exam prep products, make sure that they are offered by a registered education provider, by a PMI REP. That's always a plus. And by the way, buying it from an REP means that it is based on the current PMBOK guide, and that helps you out a bit because REPs are required to keep their products up to date. Okay. So much for exam simulators, but the biggest question that people usually ask me is this: well, how do I know whether or not I'm ready to take the exam? Because PMI doesn't tell you how many questions you have to answer correctly. In the past, we knew that you had to have 61% of the questions on the PMP exam answered correctly, but that's a very old number, so forget that number right away. Because today the PMP exam is scored with a very difficult algorithm. So we don't really know how many questions you need to have correctly. So how should I know? When am I ready? And what you see on the screen is the solution for this. So as you are preparing for the exam, as you are taking free sample questions, as you are going through your simulator, keep track of how many you are answering correctly there. And if you see that you are regularly answering 85% of the sample questions correctly in your first try, then you can consider yourself to be ready. So if you answer a question 3 times, only the first time counts. Only the first time counts towards this 85% of regularly answering correctly. Why do I say that? Well, how many times do you have a chance to answer a question in the real PMP exam? Once. You have to be able to answer a question correctly on the first try. That's how you pass the PMP exam. If you answer it correctly on the 5th try, well, that doesn't count because you had it wrong in the first try. So 85% correct on your first attempt. As a general rule, you can consider yourself to be ready. Okay, so we've applied, we've studied, we have the materials, we know from the PMP exam simulator, we are ready here in step number 6. So step number 7 takes us to the exam day. Again, in the ebook, we're going to go more into detail. What I want to look at right now with you is going to the exam room, being there, getting ready for your day. So my number 1 recommendation there is arrive early as you are going to the Prometrics Test Center. Make sure that you're arriving anywhere up to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour early at the testing center. You don't want the bus to be late. You don't want to suddenly be in traffic because there is construction going on, or even worse, your car breaking down. Or what happened to a student of mine about 10 days ago. He received the letter from the Prometric Testing Center telling him the day and the location where he had to be for his exam. He went there on the day to the location that he was told. Unfortunately, in the meantime, they had moved to a new location. He was there an hour early. He was able to drive to the new location and still take his PMP exam. So do arrive early. Definitely, you have to bring your ID and you have to bring your confirmation letter as well. The ID is obviously a government-issued confirmation letter, and it should also have a photo on it. And the confirmation letter, that is the confirmation letter from PMI saying, yes, you are eligible to take the PMP exam, here's your number, and also the letter from the Prometric Testing Center that confirms where and when you are going to have to be in order to take your exam. Now, here's one more thing. Make sure that the names match, so that the name on your government ID matches the name on those confirmations. In my case, they didn't. I mean, try, without looking at it, try to spell my name. Okay? Take a piece of paper, spell my name. It's a rather difficult name, Cornelius Fichtner. Well, that's why the government issued driver's license that I had, and the letter from PMI and the letter from the Prometric Test Center, they all had a different way of spelling my name. And oh, by the way, I have two middle names as well, so it's not just Cornelius Fichtner, it's Cornelius Friedrich Martin Fichtner. Okay, so that makes it even more difficult. Nothing matched. Everything was different. What I did is I went to the Prometric Testing Center a week ahead of time, and I showed them everything, and they looked at it and they said, yeah, not a problem. It's just spelling issues. It's just a matter of whether or not they put your middle name in there or not. So, well, they had absolutely no problem with that. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of chatting in regards to the exam score. Okay, any number that you see currently here in the chat regarding the percentages that you have to have correct on the PMP exam are wrong. It is not 61%, it is not 105 questions that you have to have correct. We do not know. Okay, PMI does not release how many questions you have to have correct on the exam. PMI does not release what percentage that you have to have. So the 105 and the 61%, absolutely and totally incorrect. Do not believe them, ignore them, erase them from your memory right now. It is an extremely complicated algorithm that PMI uses to identify whether or not you have passed your PMP exam or not. Okay, so that was the exam day here. In step 7 in the guide, the short guide to becoming a PMP. So there's one thing I would like to remind you of, and that's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Anyone who has taken the PMP exam has a story to tell. So expect the unexpected. So what happened in my case? I went to have lunch with my team. My PMP exam was around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Went to have lunch, and my lunch did not agree with me. I felt sick almost immediately after we had finished lunch. So I went home, I took a quick nap, I still didn't feel good, but I did go and take my PMP exam. And I actually thought I was going to fail simply because, oh man, I'm feeling so bad. After 3 hours, I was ready to go out and you know, go to the bathroom and revisit my lunch there, to use a nicer way of saying that. And also outside of the Prometric Testing Center, they had construction going on. So there was, you know, hammering and pressure tools were being used outside. Plus, in the middle of my exam, a lady sat down next to me with very strong perfume. So everything seems to go wrong in my case. What did I do? I concentrated on what was important. I concentrated on answering the questions. I concentrated on passing this exam. And that's really what you have to do. You know, take the punches, go with the flow, focus, focus, focus. There's only one thing that's important, and that's passing the exam. You arrive at the testing center and they tell you, we are terribly sorry, you're not allowed to take that sweater inside. Okay, take the sweater off, put the sweater into your locker, go inside without the sweater. Do not get angry about it. Go with the flow, follow the rules. Having a sweater for 3 or 4 hours is unimportant. Just go and do what you need to do, and that is take the exam and pass the exam. All right. The last step in the short guide to becoming a PMP talks about getting recertified. Now, most of you are here because you are preparing for the PMP exam, so that means that this is not really interesting to you yet, so we're going to do this rather quickly here. The PMP exam is only valid for 3 years, so if you take your exam today, it is valid for 3 years, and then you have to recertify, but don't worry, you do not have to take the exam again. The process is completely different. You have to earn 60 professional development units, PDUs, every 3 years, and then you have to pay a recertification fee. Basically, these 60 PDUs means that you have to invest 60 hours in your professional development. You have to go to classes, you have to teach somebody else, you have to read books. There are many ways how you can earn these 60 PDUs. And in my view, or my tip here is, use podcasts, okay? There are so many free podcasts out there that you can listen to. These will allow you to earn those PDUs after you have become a PMP. So don't worry about that right now if you are preparing for the PMP exam, but once you have passed, remember seeing this on the webinar here today. Oh yes, I have to earn these PDUs, and why don't I subscribe to a free podcast or a paid podcast and earn my PDUs that way? All right, don't worry, we're not yet done, because let's take a look at the agenda. We have gone through the short guide to becoming a PMP, the 8 steps that are in there, but now I want to take you outside of the guide, and I want to do something totally different. I want to take a look at multiple choice test-taking strategies with you, because many people haven't taken an exam like this in years. So how do you go about actually taking an exam like this? Well, here are my tips for you. But before I can give you my tips, you have to know what questions you're going to get on the exam. So there are 5 types of questions. First of all, there are situational questions. There is some kind of a situation that is presented to you in the question, and you have to identify what should be done next. Your sponsor comes to your office and tells you that blah, 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 blah. And then what is the best thing to do? All right, that's the largest number of questions that you will see this way. Then you may have formula-based questions on the exam. These test your knowledge of the formulas and how to apply and perform the calculation, and also how to interpret results that are calculated in such a way. Knowledge-based questions, they test your knowledge about facts. For instance, what is the definition of the work breakdown structure? You have to know that, and A, B, C, D will give you possible definitions, and you have to select the correct one. Then there are interpretational questions. Usually interpretational questions are combined with a situation. There's something going on and you have to deduce a situation or a condition and figure out what's going on and answer in the appropriate way according to what the best practices from the PMBOK guide tell us. And last but not least, we have the specific technique questions. This means that you're going to have to identify a technique based on a diagram or a technique that is inherent to a situation. Okay, so these are the 5 types of questions that you may come across in your PMP exam. So what techniques can you use, can you apply in answering these questions? Well, here are a few suggestions of mine for you. First of all, I want you to go ahead and read the question before you look at the answers. Right? And by reading the question, I mean really focus on the question. I recently took a preparation class for another certification exam myself, and I didn't follow this recommendation here. And as we in the group went through the questions, I kind of just flew over a question, didn't really read it, and of course I got the answer wrong. So know the question, know what they are really asking by reading the questions before you look at the answers. Then go ahead, read all the choices before choosing your answers. So read A, B, C, and D. Make sure that you understand what the 4 options are that you have, and only then make your choice. And here's the good news. In the PMP exam, even though you have 4 possible answers, 1 or 2 of them are really throwaways. So you can look at the question and say, okay, this question is all about cost management, and one of the answers is about risk management. So I can just simply kick that out and ignore it. So you only have 3 that you need to select from. Okay, so this is kind of the traditional way of going about it, of reading the question, reading the answers, and making your choice by elimination. But there are other ways in how you can do this. And here's one. Come up with the answer in your head before you look at the possible answer. So read the question without reading the answers, and then think to yourself, okay, I know what the question is, I understand the question, so what is my answer that I would give in this particular situation? Okay, now you know what you would say. Now go ahead and read A, B, C, and D, and very likely the answer that you came up with in your head is one of the available choices. So that way you know before you read the answer what it is that you would select. Okay, a few more tips and techniques here in regards to answering these questions. I want you to answer all the questions on this exam. The exam has 200 questions. If you answer 199 and leave one of them unanswered, that means the unanswered question, well, it's wrong. So there is no penalty for guessing. So if there is 1 or 2 questions that you have to say, you know, I really don't know, well, go ahead and guess what the answer might be. If you leave it unanswered, it is wrong. If you guess and just select one of the 4 possible answers, at least you have a 25% chance of getting it right. And last but not least here, there is a mark for review button in the exam. So when you are on a question, you go, you know, I'm not sure. I think it's B, but I'm really not all too sure. You can select B and then say mark for review. In this way, you've made your choice, but you've also told yourself, hey, I have to look at this later on again. And really, only do this for those questions where you are unsure. If you're absolutely sure, this is A, no question about it, don't mark it. Answer it, leave it, don't go back to it. Your first answer is usually the correct one. If you would like to have some more of these strategies in regards to the test-taking techniques, I recommend going over to YouTube and looking up the user Paul Devoto. You can see it on your screen right now. Paul Devoto is the user's name. He has 12 videos up there for test-taking strategies. Only watch videos 1 to 4. Videos 5 to 12, they do not really apply to the PMP exam. But videos 1 to 4, those are quite good. You can use those in regards to preparing for the exam and understanding techniques to answering all these questions. Very well. There's a question in the chat. Are you allowed to bring anything with you to the test? Clothing. Yes, you are allowed to wear clothes into the room, but other than that, no. You do not bring a pen, you do not bring paper, you do not bring a calculator, you do not bring a book, you don't bring anything. You go in there just wearing your clothes and nothing else. I have actually heard in some testing centers, if you wear a large jacket, you have to leave it outside. You cannot wear a hat, things like that. But just your clothes, you go in and you take the exam. Looking back at the agenda, the green bullets we have taken care of. We are now moving towards the end, and I promised everybody that we would have a series of discount coupons here that you could use to purchase some of our products if you would like them. Here they go. Here you go with the discount coupons. Now don't worry, you do not have to write them down, because these discount coupons here, I'm going to send them to you via email. You can also find them on my blog. But as you can see here, we're giving quite a substantial discount on all our products. But let me say a few things and about the coupons. First of all, these coupons are only valid for 3 days after this live webinar. So if you would like to use a coupon, you have to do it in the next 72 hours. They're valid for new purchases only, so if you happen to already have purchased one of our products, then you cannot apply the coupon after the fact. Remember, we'll send you an email with all the details, and the details will also be on my blog, corneliusfichtner.com. They're not there yet, so don't go there yet and look for it. I will put that up later in the day. And there is a question about the calculator. Yes, the answer that one of the attendees has given is correct. You cannot bring a calculator to the exam room. You will be doing the exam on a computer, and it is a Windows-based calculator. So my tip is get used to the Windows-based calculator. If you have to make any calculations as you're preparing for the exam, don't use a handheld calculator. Instead, sit at your computer and use the built-in Windows calculator. All right. So much for the coupons and the calculator here. And last but not least here in our presentation, I would like you to take some action. Everybody here on this call is probably excited about the short guide to becoming a PMP exam. So why don't you go ahead and stop by at freepmexamguide.com and download your copy right now. Tweet about it, put it on Facebook, and get your copy right away. Or simply wait for the email to show up. Of course, I would prefer it if you went there on your own and downloaded it by telling others about it, because that helps me get the word out, helps me to reach out to your friends and let them know that this book is now available. Once you have your copy, then please read it and follow the guide. It is full of tips and tricks. Like I said, 7 years of experience in preparing people for this exam. You'll find pretty much every question answered in the guide. And last but not least, a little bit of a selfish take action here. Please use the discount coupons. Go take a look at the products that we offer in our organization and make use of the discount coupons that we are giving away today here on the webinar. Well, that's it for right now. Thank you very much for participating in my first live webinar. I appreciate all of you attending, and I hope that you have enjoyed yourself. And most importantly, I wish you all the best with your PMP exam. And as always, until next time.